You are listening to WXRWLP Milwaukee on 104.1 FM and on riverwestradio.com everywhere. Now you can also listen by telling your smart speaker to play River West Radio. Support for this program comes from Collectivo Coffee and Troubadour Bakery, makers of artisan breads and scratched baked goodies. Visitors to Collectivo's Bayview Cafe can look in on Troubadour Bakers as they prepare breads and cafe favorites daily. More info is at collectivocoffee.com. Welcome to Cinema Fireside, and thank you, listeners, for listening. And hopefully we have Gabe Cole in. He's the man of the hour, the man with the extemporaneous attitude that makes sure that we get through the night successfully. And until that time, you got me. And I really appreciate you listening in. It's good stuff. If you're listening live, it's a cold winter night in Milwaukee, and Rabbi is outside with his bike. Drive safe, my man, as he hits the merciless streets once more, stopping in our station for a brief respite from the daunting cold. And our man is back out in the dark now, pedaling away. So, what do we got here? We got some talk about films. I've always been meaning to see Bulworth, and obviously within the political spectrum, we can go back to Best Picture of 49, which is Old King's Men, and I thought that was kind of surprisingly. It went places I didn't expect, but I'd have to see that again. So you can. If you haven't seen All the King's Men, that's from 49. You can start on up. And so Bulworth, written and directed by Warren Beatty, a very competent actor, a very competent director. And someday I'm going to read one of his biographies. I mean, I read a lot, so I want to get to that definitely sooner than later. So it was great to see Bulworth. And if you haven't seen it, excellent. Gabe, thanks for calling in, my man. We're going to hit you soon. Yeah, if you haven't seen Bulworth, definitely check that out. And recently at the university, I saw Thelma. And that's a European film in the horror genre, but it's sublime and subtle. So it's not in your face with heady montage trying to create a velocity that's just not apparent in the mise-en-scène, whereas films such as Thelma, exist within the frame and not in the juxtapositions of the shot. So that's interesting. A lot of action films are shot in with scenes in telephoto, so that kind of compacts the action and takes you out of any spatial luxury. It's not like you're taking in a vista, so you're just kind of always on the front line of visual information that's relentless. So these films operate at a different pace. Last week I couldn't think of the title of the Swedish film, and that is Let the Right One In. And also from Iran, I revisited A Girl Walks Home at Night, and it has a very simplistic, or I should say simple elegance to it, black and white. If you haven't seen A Girl Walks Home at Night, that's something to see, most certainly. And interestingly enough, that the malevolent force is actually the moral center. And actually in a lot of films and works, you will find that the entity causing the mayhem is actually the compass, that kind of dictates, how the moral stratosphere needs to get back into order. And that theme remains consistent in A Girl Walks Home at Night. So if you haven't, and if you're a filmmaker, it's something to see. The use of space, the use of time, and so that Let the Right One In Thelma, those three operate and have the same compositional values and the same temporal values. Some people, it's harder to take because they have to be spoon-fed motion, because we're all different, right? And some people play video games, some people don't. Some people wouldn't touch a video game with a 10-foot pole or sit in front of a screen if their life depended on it. And I kind of fall in that category myself, man. I don't know if I've just ain't gonna happen, man. But anyway, so then checked out Larry Clark's Another Day in Paradise. He made Kids. I believe that's from back in the 90s, and that was a very cutting edge film at the time. Very morally out there. If you saw Kids, you remember that. You know what I'm talking about. So, and then I think he reminds me a little bit of Mark Levin, who directed Slam, and then Mr. Levin directed something else that I wanted to check out, so we'll see about that. And also Gabe is advising me to check out Ken Park, so I've written that on my hand, and we'll try to accomplish that. So, at night, I just dig into this Graham Nash autobiography. I love music memoirs, autobiographies, biographies. I just finished one by Sammy Hagar, and I just like people who dedicate themselves to their work, and that their work brings them rewards like nothing else can. People that are so connected to themselves, and it's just incredible. One of the maestros of that, of course, is Bob Dylan, who really created himself and really stuck to his guns. And there are many people like that. And you have Jim Morrison, who his vices obviously got the best of him, but an immense talent. He went to film school, and for a teacher, he actually, if I remember correctly, had Joseph von Sternberg as a film teacher at UCLA. And if you know who Joseph von Sternberg is, he's looks very rigid from time gone by. And if you to juxtapose those two cats together, it's a remarkable juxtaposition, to say the least. So yeah, I remember I read No One Gets Out Here Alive twice. I rarely read a book twice. I've read The Great Gatsby at least twice. No One Here Gets Out Alive twice. The Hound of the Baskervilles at least twice. So yeah, Graham Nash. It's one of those books that you just keep reading and reading and reading. Other books, they're like a slog, and you have to kind of like work your way through in labored increments. And this is certainly not the case. So I was reading a Johnny Winter one too, and I'm about halfway through. Kind of got sidetracked, so sometime I'm going to have to start that one over again. They had done a documentary on him, and I actually had written about it for one of the entities that I write for, so that was interesting. And actually I went to the theater and I saw 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and I could see that definitely winning Best Picture. And it's very, Hollywood screenwriters, it's a particular template. There's no doubt about it. These beats, these rhythmic narrative beats, you can really obviously, they're apparent. I'll put it to you that way. And toward the end of the film, the contrivances were getting so weighty and stacking up on each other. I was like, oh man, is this film going to hold, or is this just going to just completely crumble into such a premeditated obviousness that it's going to ruin the whole thing? Are these parts going to disseminate the whole? Well, it's a Hollywood film, and it did hold, but yeah, you will see one contrivance after another. In fact, in reading and studying, they talk about, can you live with the coincidences that these films demand they have, that bring certain characters, certain situations together, and you think, well, does this really happen in real life? Could this continually, sequentially keep happening, all of these coincidences? But film is not real life, so you don't have to get caught up in that kind of conundrum. And, you just, with 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, just enjoy it. It's a really good film. Again, I would have no problem with it winning Best Picture. It's emotionally on target, that's for sure. And it's, it'll be a good couple hours spent. You'll enjoy yourself undoubtedly, and get drawn into the story, get drawn into the plot, obviously, as things unfold, and twist and so on and so forth, and alliances form and this, that, the other thing. So, I want to see Get Out and Phantom Thread before the Academy Awards. I don't really have that maniacal impulse to see everything, and there's one film that people have been talking about, and it's a fantasy, and it's like, nah, I'm just not down with that. I just can't get into it. I'd rather do taxes than bowl. I think bowling is boring. I think doing taxes is exciting. So everyone's different. Bowling, you think, man, I could be doing something worthy, man. Start going through numbers or something like that, definitely, so you can sleep at night. But anyway, so be it, man. The most important part is I hope everyone's well. I hope everyone's taking walks, and you should. It's a good idea to do it at least a couple times a day. It's not the point of taking a walk. It's the point of moving around on a regular basis. So it's like, I took a walk. Well, did you walk fast? Did you do it 2-3 times a day? And if you can't do it 2 or 3 times a day, something you got to think twice, man. You're gonna be in a hospital bed thinking, man, why didn't I take those walks? And another thing too, be connected to yourself. Learn to say no, because when you're saying no to others, you're saying yes to yourselves. I mean, you got to look out for yourself, and you just don't want to cheat yourself of your self potential. And unless you're lucky enough to have people that actually have your best interests in mind, that you do experience the joy and rewards of mutual benefit, just say no to all of these lunatics and all of these maniacs because they just ain't got it going on, Don't worry about it. You ain't going to be missing out on nothing. Gabe, talk to me.
Hey, Mark. How you doing? Hey, everyone.
I've done enough to be okay tonight.
I like what I'm hearing. Mark, it's it's an interesting time for movies because it's people, the average person that doesn't normally have that much to say about movies or that much to think about movies, there's a lot being written about, these award, what people refer to as the award season films. So those films, after a couple months of gestating, and in some cases, a lot of these movies come out in the summer, come out in the fall, and then they get re-released after the nominations for Best Picture, post Golden Globes, pre-Academy Awards, and then you get this other stuff like the Directors Guild, the Producers Guild Awards, which almost unilaterally predict the films that are the awards as they're going to be distributed. Producers Guild Awards usually between the two of them, you can, almost, I think it's like 97% of the time, there's like 98, that's the way, and Screen Actors Guild, Producers Guild, Directors Guild, that's the way that the awards are going to be distributed at the Academy Awards themselves, because those are the same, a large majority of the people that are members of those guilds are also, in many cases, the voting membership of the Academy Awards of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. So, when you fill out these ballots or these polls of like, oh, who's going to win this, who's going to win that, if you want to win in your office pool, just like if you're doing a football pool, if you're going with your opinion, now, when I think it's fun to do that, to actually guess who you're going to win when you have a group of people, especially when you have film people and non-film people alike, and then you can sit and, if you work together and, you discuss this, throughout your workday once in a while, or it's a group of friends and you discuss this once in a while or whatever, it's your family. What's interesting is to be able to have these somewhat sophisticated film conversations with non-film people, and I live for that. That's what I can't get enough of that, when you have people that don't necessarily speak the language, but can understand their own rhythms of what works for them, and they start to understand the bits and pieces of why these they're like, okay, I've been told that these movies are great, or that these are the exceptional films of the year, according to a certain select group of people. Obviously, there's all these foreign films, there's all these independent films, there's all this great cinema that doesn't get nominated for Best Picture and the acting awards. But within that sect, there's still an interesting slew. So you have these interesting discussions, and when people describe why they think, why they would want someone to win an acting award, or why they want someone like, oh, this was my favorite performance and here's why. Like it has a personal connotation. Like I really felt the immediacy. Like I felt like that performance was real, or I could relate to that. Like that's what domestic violence really does look like. That's what it feels like. There's stuff like that. When you have conversations like in the case of Lady Bird, that's a very intimate, interesting, entertaining, thoughtful, intelligent, and really expressive look at a mother-daughter relationship that, in some ways, yeah, this is a film that's kind of been done before, or that maybe isn't anything special. But there's something that in the conversations I've been having with women and the way that they've been talking about that film, with the intimacy of it and the realism, there's a certain emotional factor that they walk away with that I've noticed that male viewers have been like, there's nothing special about this movie. And, I haven't necessarily said anything like, it's not a factor of, well, you don't get it, but it's a factor of you didn't live it. It's just experiential, that it's like, well, this isn't a part of your life, so I get the fact that it doesn't mean anything to you. Saying something is meaningful or not is really, it's meaningless. It doesn't matter. These are all just personal opinions. But when a movie is really heartfelt and when it really has an emotional impact on people, especially non-film people, that really registers with me. And when I keep hearing that a movie emotionally registers with someone and they express why, it's like I almost relive the film and I re-examine the film intellectually and emotionally. It's not like I hold true to my own opinion, like, well, that's not how I saw it, so therefore, it's like my opinion of a film is constantly changing. And what I'm lucky to have is this very extreme photographic and auditory memory where I can replay a film very, very descriptively in my head. And that's gotten stronger over the years in some ways. And my ability to replay films that I saw years and years ago, I'm very grateful to have that, so I don't have to keep rewatching movies over and over to keep getting the details. In certain cases of movies that are very well scripted and very specifically scripted, it does help to re-examine, just in terms of the enjoyment factor or in terms of seeing things that you cannot possibly see on a first viewing. Knowing what a film entails, where a film is going, what a film achieves, both in terms of what you think the filmmaker or the people involved in the film, the performances that the actors were hoping to achieve, and what you thought the film achieved, and then coming back to it later after having discussed the film with other people and seeing it in this new light of like talking about it with non-film people, and you're like, and it can either be a completely new experience, or it can be just like or sometimes it's really disheartening where it's like, yeah, this film really is empty and lackluster and doesn't really have anything, and there isn't anything there. So in that regard, I usually try and do the Pauline Kael method of just watching films at one time and seeing as many films as possible without having to spend the time rewatching movies. But it does reward when you're dealing with intelligent stuff that provokes viewership, that demands viewership, that at least deserves the respect of viewership, which I can't say that for all the movies that come out in American cinemas all year. That I wouldn't say like, oh, this deserves to be seen, this should be seen, or this must be seen, or this even in some cases even just deserves the respect of being of having an audience observe quiet while it's it's being played in a cinema in the theater. Like, there are just so many insultingly bad films that come out in every country around the world all year round. So when it gets to award season, it's just really cool to have these more thoughtful discussions with people, film and non-film people alike. So you have movies like I finally watched I, Tonya, which concludes seeing every film that's now nominated for best pictures, all the screenplay
congratulations,
awards.
Gabe, by the way, and that is one I'd like to see as well. Congratulations, my man.
Yep, it's Mark. I highly recommend it. It's
you don't need to, my man. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, it's just you know, what's interesting about I, Tonya is that it wasn't nominated for all these other accolades. It's gotten these two acting awards. It's gotten nominated for these two acting awards, which are the big standout accolades that every review points out, and everyone who sees it points out, oh, Allison Janney and Margot Robbie are great, and and there's always this negative connotation about the real Tonya Harding or about their depiction of the real events, and I felt like that has nothing to do with the actual strength of this powerfully well-made film that's on the screen. That's just resolutely well executed, well shot, doesn't show off, doesn't waste time with gimmicks, and it experiments, it plays, it jumps around. It kept me consistently engaged. What I liked about it is that there seems to be a budgetary efficientness that fits the setting and the class structure of the film itself, of these poor people. So the fact that the film does the best that it can with the money that's allocated, but it does a really sophisticated job. There's numerous scenes where there are invisible special effects, where Margot Robbie disappears in single tracking shots with numerous stunt doubles and pulls off these amazing sequences of skating. And I remember very specifically Tonya Harding, the real Tonya Harding, when I was 8 years old was when the scandal hit its head in the 1994 Olympics. Should I say hit its knee? And, that was that was a bizarre scandal. And then news was especially television news was very different then. The difference between sensationalistic news and tabloid news and real news, there was sort of this differential. Now that we've come into this age where, it's a very different, and where news is a much different thing. It's much more just like entertainment, reality television. I remember I couldn't figure out at the time really who Tonya Harding was, because her appearance was so specific, and her character, just the character of Tonya Harding in real life. And Margot Robbie, it's like I was trying to evaporate my preconceived notion of Tonya Harding, because her version is so alive. And when she's recreating Tonya Harding, it's like surreal. It's like psychedelic news footage fireworks. You're just watching someone take on reality with such deftness and with such deftness and calculation, but also allowing, it's almost like that Meryl Streep ability to really create something new based in reality, but augmented and create a new presence where this is the reality. Meryl Streep did that with The Iron Lady, where it's almost like this now is the standard of that real person rather than the real person herself. And that's just one quality of the film. The film stands on the shoulders of the fact that performance is such a wild ride of all sorts of emotional calibers. But it takes you places because her humanistic approach to Tonya Harding is its own thing. And the film doesn't have any real calculations, it doesn't have any manipulations, and it isn't trying to tell you what to think, which is the most refreshing thing that I thought about it. I mean, the character itself is basically enabling herself to be abused throughout the film. She enables domestic violence to continue, and she doesn't justify it. She doesn't try to defend it, but she also allows you to see how that happens. And it's a very realistic explanation and portrayal of how that does happen. As it does happen. It happens all the time. It's happened all the time. and it will happen. Even though we're getting into a more, sensitive age about this kind of stuff, it does happen, and it's very frank and very upfront and very unjudgmental look at those type of extreme emotions, especially when you're dealing with people in lower class. I thought it was extremely refreshing because you're not dealing with. It wasn't presented in this in a way that was either mimicking the lack of intelligence to create some sort of like theater of the absurd, where you're gawking at them or you're making fun of them. But it also wasn't trying to be smarter than these people were. You clearly are watching people very smartly portray very dumb people. And that's hard to do. To really calculatedly get into the mind and stay in the mind and within the limitations and the parameters of people that are not smart is a very difficult thing to do in a film, because their limitations, both in terms of their reasoning, their logic, but also you have to trap yourself in the boundaries of their feelings and their logic. And the film, all the characters in this film do that exquisitely. It's a great portrait of low-class America at a time when I saw a fair amount of that myself. The clothing, the haircuts, and it represents some of that with a kitsch factor. Admittedly, it's one thing that I think it holds on to a little too strongly, but it's necessary in order to firmly cement itself in the era, its people, and its escapisms too. I thought it was a beautiful film. I thought it was beautifully written. I thought it was wildly entertaining. But I can see why people were a little reserved about maybe giving it some of the highest honors. But I thought it was tremendously entertaining and as good as anything else that was nominated for Best Picture this year. But it's a Hollywood film. These are Hollywood films that followed the Hollywood guidelines. And Mark, I was really glad that you said that. Especially Three Billboards is, in all likelihood, probably going to win Best Picture.
Yay.
based on the award. So,
it feels like a best picture. It feels like a best picture.
It does, and I'm glad you said that, Mark, because the film has gotten a lot of praise and a lot of disdain in both quarters. And the disdain, as I've said before in the show, seems to come from an attack that has nothing to do with the artistic confines of the film's product as a work of a writer and a director. It's just all this stuff has to do with, why would you create a character that's that racist? Why would you create this? Why would you? And, we're living in a world that are full of these kinds of people and who don't have these magical redeeming arcs in the third quarter, in the third act, where they all of a sudden decide, I'm a good guy now. Oh, I'm a good woman now. Oh, I'm a humanistic, where they have these Hollywood arcs. We live in a world where we're full of these kinds of people, and we don't have Hollywood endings to this kind of stuff. And this isn't a perfect, happy film where everything works in a happy way, and everyone says, and everyone says the happy thing to each other. It does have how would I say it? Like the thing about it is, like, Mark, you're absolutely right, that it has that Hollywood. There's times where it has the contrivance, the coincidence, the order, the purpose, the continuance, the sequential and spatial relations to everyone. And part of that is that it is set in a small town, but it's those settings that become familiar with the interactions of the usual characters, the usual suspects, if you will. And what it does is, you're right, it creates a play, it creates a drama, and it creates a film. And I think it's a hell of a film. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I know that the language, I know the content, I know the use of the other F word really bothered a lot of people. I know the use of a lot of other language that was used in the film. I know the tone of the film was off-putting to people, and they said, listen, I get it that this is a smart film. This is a vibrant film. This is even a humanistic film. I just didn't like it. And there's nothing wrong with that. there's no right or wrong answer on this issue. I do feel that it's a little absurd to judge the film just on the parameters of these red flags going off, and so your brain shuts off, or your feelings, your brain, and your heart shuts off, so you can't look at people you can't look at people, or you can't look at characters just because these flags go off, so you shut down. That just reeks of stupidity to me personally. And that comes across as extremely closed-minded and judgmental, if anything, which is strange that that's exactly what they're accusing the film of being in the first place. But that's a discussion that I definitely don't have with people when they say that they were offended by the film. I just sort of politely listen to what they had to say and what they thought, and when they ask me what I thought of it, I usually abstain from saying that I thought it was probably the best film of the year. It's one of the more interesting discussions that a movie has brought up this year. So that's super cool. Get Out is probably the other more interesting film that's come out this year in terms of bringing up larger questions about race and class, and still providing an extremely entertaining film.
What's next on your list?
Really good stuff there. Next, Mark, I'm finishing up the best foreign film categories. So, The Insult from Lebanon, A Fantastic Woman from Chile, Of Heart and Mind, which is on Netflix, which is Hungarian, and Loveless from Russia, which is directed by the gentleman who made Leviathan 4 years ago. Which I can never remember his name, but he continues to be one of the world's best filmmakers. He makes really interesting, really verbose, muscular. I would say almost he just makes great films that I don't want to compare him to other great filmmakers, but his strength is dialogue. It's really poetic. It's really funny, and it's really symbolic. And he makes films about real people, but it says a lot about Russian culture. And his new one, Loveless, is no exception to that. And there's a fifth film that I know I also am going to watch very soon, and I can't remember the title. But those are all strong contenders. A Fantastic Woman, which just went into wide release last week. Sony Pictures Classics picked that one up, and that looks just utterly fantastic. And Loveless, I am eagerly awaiting because it's intelligent, verbose, muscular filmmaking. I mean, I can't say that personally, but everything this guy's made and everything that I've read about it just says this is a dark, contemplative film for, to be honest, a little bit morose, dark, contemplative people.
Contemplative.
So, I'm always down for it. And I intelligent Russian films that have lots of subtext, lots of dialogue, and are not big on contrivance or melodrama or sentimentality. I am all about that. I'm all about just dark, vicious movies that end on unhappy notes, realistic notes that have real things to say about real people, that end in these dire situations where things are not going to get better. They're going to get worse. This is the reality of our daily lives. Stuff like that. I'll be honest, those aren't the kinds of movies that I usually watch. I'd say, but it falls into about 1 out of 3 films fall on the darker side. But I need that, and I think it's important for people to watch cinema like that occasionally, or even more occasionally, because I think it keeps you reflective. I think it keeps you grateful for what you do have. And I think it's good to watch cinema that has that cornerstone of artistic reality, where ordinary life can be very melodramatic and beautiful and artistic and awful at the same time. And I think when you see filmmakers that can see that and reflect that and find the poignance, the beauty, and the ugliness all at once, where it's not just this stupid, happy film with stupid, happy people doing stupid, happy crap from 1 minute to the next.
No, wait a second. I kind of like to be in that boat to be stupid happy, man. I'm serious. I need to get there.
I know.
Gabe, I am going to get there.
I know.
And thank you
Mark,
for touching upon that. Thank you.
There's a lot of this stupid, but Mark, I mean, it's just like, it's just like gotten to the point where like even good movies, most American films fall into this it's just like this syncopatic rhythm of just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, the movie ends. And there's oftentimes interesting subtext or an interesting supporting character or an interesting portrayal of a type of person, or some interesting dialogue that comes up here or there, or just a different take on it, a ruthless take on a genre, or a straightforward take on an issue, a social issue in life. I'll give you an example. I just got done watching Girls Trip the other day with my girlfriend, and I watched it because it had gotten good reviews, when it came out earlier in the year. It's a film about 4 black women who have been best friends for 20-something years, and they've all gotten their careers and their lives going, and they've stopped hanging out as often, and they go on this annual trip. Well, they've known each other since high school, and this film got very strong reviews, and I was very surprised by it because the trailer just made it look like it was going to be awful. But it got very strong 3 and 3.5 star reviews. It was noted as being a very funny comedy, so I watched it, and it falls into all the contrived mainstream American comedy tropes, but it's the non-comedic scenes that actually held my attention because of its realistic portrayal of the struggles that people go through, especially in codependent relationships, when they don't believe in themselves and they don't stand up for themselves and they give all their energy to someone else and they don't take the time to take care of themselves. When they don't of themselves, and even when all the evidence around you shows you, hey, this is a destructive relationship. Hey, this is an emotionally abusive relationship. Hey, this person is cheating on you. Hey, this person is really cheating on you. Hey, this person needs to go. And in the case of this movie, the person who's being treated awfully is like this self-help guru. She's like the new Oprah, and her entire career exists around helping and empowering success, I would say, women trying to come up and become middle class or even go into the beyond, and find their voice and either achieve some sort of personal freedom where they're not codependent or they're not holding themselves back. And here her character is holding herself back. But what's good about what I thought was well scripted about the film is that all the components of the struggle that come to a head rather it actually turns into a fairly well acted and well put together film. I was really surprised at how well crafted the film was that all the components of the struggle are not revealed until near the end of the second act. You don't even see the complexity of the interpersonal conflicts between the characters until about 2/3 of it is exposed well into the second act, and then the last layers of the conflict all come out in a single argument between all 4 of the characters in an empty lobby, and it all pulls all the pieces together in a seamless sequence of dialogue. And I'm sitting there going, this is actually a really, really good film, except the cinematography. There's like nothing here to recommend besides the fact that I'm like, this is really strong, this is really smart, this is really smart, that's really smart. This is like an unnecessarily well done, well executed mainstream comedy that didn't need to be this good. I mean, if you would have marketed this to the same group of people that went to go see it, if it had been really bad, they would have still gone to go see it. Didn't need to be this good, but I appreciated it. And but at the same time, when it was over, I'm like, did I really gain anything out of this movie? Did I learn anything? Did I feel anything new? Did I go anywhere? Was there one shot in this film that was interesting? Was there one moment of, true artistic brilliance where there was just even a moment where the visuals and the story and the acting and everything came together in a meaningful way that wasn't just a piece of commerce? And I can't say that there was, but I appreciated that it was an above average piece of commerce.
Wait, what are we talking about?
It's a film called Girls Trip. It came out earlier in the year. And it's a film that was marketed at women, usually at pairs of women to go see this together, or as a date film. And it was primarily marketed at younger African American audiences. And they got pretty strong reviews when it came out. So I finally saw it after having read these good reviews about it and wanting something a little less serious for the evening that I was going to watch with my girlfriend. And I actually was the one more emotionally moved by it than she was, which I thought was interesting. So that was an unexpected delight, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who likes to watch, who I would call serious cinema. It's definitely not in the serious cinema boat.
My man, Mark, you've seen a girl walk home alone at night, correct?
Oh, absolutely, Mark. I was just going to say that there's these films that fall into that other horror category. Obviously, Cronenberg and others. There's all these Obsession. You and I have talked about that film at length on the show. Very grateful for that because that's one of my all-time favorite films. But let the right one in, and a girl walks home alone at night. I'm glad that you made that link between the two of them, because there is that there's a subtlety and there's a space in those films. There's a calm and there's that sense of lingering dread where you can just feel the intelligence at the fact that the filmmakers are taking their time with everything. David Thompson actually brought up in his assessment of Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, at the time when that came out, he said, this is the best film of the year so far. I think he said this in June or July of the year that it came out. And he said, by far, this is the best film I've seen all year. It's an unexpected delight. And what he was most impressed with was that there seems to be all this political subtext underneath it, but he's like, I couldn't quite figure out exactly what the subtext was, because the film was giving me the benefit of me being able to make up my own mind and let my own mind wander with these beautiful visuals. And it was, and when I watched the film about a year later, and those lingering shots of the woman, who, is a vampire, wearing a headscarf and wearing full dress, full Muslim dress, and, riding down the street on a longboard in just slight slow motion, and essentially with just this ethereally cool postmodern music on the postmodern pop music on the soundtrack. They're really, in theory, if you were to put down on paper what am I watching, you would say, well, there's a woman dressed appropriately in a Muslim country on a longboard riding down the street, music's playing on the soundtrack. That's a fair portion of the movie. There's these scenes at a drug dealer's house. There's these other interactions that happen that later on the plot gets more involved, and somehow it stays really loose and almost pointless. But it's those visuals, it's the visual makeup of the film that lets you decide what's the subtext of this film. Everyone that I've talked about that film has a completely different take on it, and I think that's super cool. Some people look at it as an extremely political film about women in Iran, about women in Muslim countries. Some people look at it as this take on the vampire on these tropes about gender and sexuality. Some people look at it as a very straight, just a very arty vampire film. Some people look at it as a feminist film. Some people look at it as a gothic, almost postmodern noir. And the fact that it's all those things, it has all these possible qualities to it, and it's just gorgeous. It's just a strange, awesome movie. I've recommended that to a lot of people, and about half the people I've recommended it to didn't really care for it, I would say. But they walked away with something really powerful. Like, I don't know what to think about that, but I'm really glad I watched it, at the very least. And Let the Right One In is a film that has universally come to almost universal acclaim. I can't think of a person who loves movies that I've talked to about that film who doesn't put that on there. No, that's that's one of the great horror films of all time. That people often put that near the top and like their top 10 horror films list. Oddly enough, its American remake is equally amazing. Let Me In, that came out in, I believe, 2010. That's also I
haven't seen that yet. How is that?
It's great, Mark. I mean, some people even say I think it's absurd when people say this, but some people actually prefer the remake to the original film.
Why, they can't read subtitles?
No, it's an American film. The remake is an American movie. It was made.
Right, no, I understand that. That's why I think Sarah Lou found that profoundly funny. She's still laughing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's not an unfounded statement, because the remake is amazing. Let Me In is an excruciatingly dark, vicious, violent, haunting, powerful film on its own. If Let the Right One In had never come out, and Let Me In had been the only trace of it that American audiences had ever seen, Let Me In would be considered this horror classic.
Well, dude, I think you've sold all of us. We're going to go check that out. Let Me In, is that correct? Let Me In. It's a remake of Let the Right One In. Mark, there's one shot in particular. There's this tracking shot inside of a car there's this sequential tracking shot that it's just so effortless, and there's so much good camera work in the film. There's this great lurking mise-en-scène. The thing about it is that it lurks under the shadow of Let the Right One In, so it's never quite able to be the great film that it is, because there's always this comparison to the other film. So I think it would be regarded as an American classic if Let the Right One In didn't exist, because it is a strong, intelligent, thoughtful horror film. But it is based on previous material, and it doesn't. I think its smartest move is that it doesn't stray far from the original material, which is this. That's when regarding remakes. I think if you're dealing with something that's already amazing in its own context and has everything there, why screw it up? But as I say that, I also remember Gus Van Sant's shot-for-shot remake of Psycho, and I see, that argument doesn't really hold up, I guess, in that case. That's an odd film, actually. Now that I think, I haven't thought about that film. That's an odd film that exists in any regard. Yeah, I have yet to see it, but I did read The Making of Psycho by Stephen Rebello, and that's a very insightful book, obviously, because it's obviously solely concerned with the making of Psycho. But yeah, Stephen Rebello, I believe it's The Making of Psycho or so. And actually, I also read David Thompson's book on that moment in Psycho. So I've read a couple on that exclusively on Psycho. So definitely.
Well, Psycho is, there's been like 3 notable books. The two that you just described, and Patrick McGilligan's book on Hitchcock.
Yeah, dude, because he's from Milwaukee, and I got that book when it came out, and I just haven't been able to locate it. I'm reading Donald Spada's Dark Side of Genius, obviously the most famous of the biographies of on Hitchcock, but that McGilligan one, dude, I got it in hardcover, can't locate it. I'm reading his one on Nicholas Ray. Mm-hmm. And, dude, I'm almost done with that about 700-page Orson Welles one McGilligan came out. with
McGilligan
just
really
all ready
is a
to finish
heavyweight.
that one.
Yeah, he's a heavyweight. I remember when I first met you, Mark. That was one of the first things you imparted on me was getting up to date with these Patrick McGilligan books. And I was like, "Who's Patrick McGilligan?" And you said, "Dude, Nicholas Ray, Hitchcock, and an upcoming." And at that point, the Orson Welles book hadn't come out yet.
Yeah, it covers Wells's career up until just as the beginnings of Citizen Kane hit the shores in his life. That's when it begins to fade out. So it's a great book on his theatrical career, his dealing with radio dramas, and then it fades out when he begins Citizen Kane.
What's super cool is that Hitchcock's reverence in American society has so changed over the years, because at one point, he was just considered this sort of mainstream populist, intelligent mainstream populist, but a mainstream populist who made entertaining films that were loaded with nuance and subtlety and precision. And he was considered, a masterclass filmmaker. Rebecca and Notorious. Lots of other films that were considered art.
And Gabe, I got to stop you right there, because it reminds me, at the university this week is a 35 millimeter print of Notorious.
Ooh,
yes,
please, anyone in Milwaukee, go see that. Notorious is, it comes and goes in its reputation, but that is widely regarded as one of Hitchcock's best films, one of his most subtle films. It has all these brilliant elements of restraint and it's a master class in filmmaking. When people have asked me at times, how do I learn how to look at a film more carefully? How do I learn how to look at shots and angles and lighting and editing and cinematography and acting and performance and the subtext of a film and plotting? Just even how do I look at filming a plot and having it, where actors are the plot, where the character development is both, where the plot of the film, the development and the climax and the continuation of the film is the emotional development of the characters and as they intertwine, and the complexity of those characters, and the literal plot itself, the premise and the plot go, point A, point B, where the treatment of the film is also exquisitely brought to life, but you have all these layers and sub-layers and stuff. And I always say, well, there's a couple of films you could look at. Aliens, James Cameron's Aliens from 86, John Carpenter's The Thing from 82, for more contemporary films. But if you really want to look at how art cinema was kept in, you can look at it as either an art film, or you could look at it as just a mainstream film where you have all those elements where, a script is brought to screen. Notorious and Rebecca and The Manchurian Candidate, I would say I can't think of better examples in terms of the subtleties and the specifics being brought in onto screen using everything that they would teach you in a film text, literally a textbook in a film class.
If you haven't seen listeners, if you haven't seen The Manchurian Candidate and you're into socio-political conspiracy thrillers, Manchurian Candidate is definitely a formative work, and along with Seconds too. I think those two are masterworks in the genre.
Yeah, Frankenheimer really, it's there's so many great filmmakers from that period, but for someone who had an overarching just understanding of film and had a grasp on the changing tide of film, before Robert Altman sort of put his stamp down in the 70s with that really different, totally unique form of storytelling that he could.
And I got to say, when you bring up Robert Altman, I believe it's from 72. If you haven't seen Images and you enjoy Robert Altman, see that. That's kind of like finds its parallelity with Bergman's Persona. But yeah, check out Images, and not only that, also with Elliot Gould, the Long Goodbye as well.
Yep. I was just browsing through a book today that was made in conjunction with that film that I was talking about on the show about 6 or 7 months ago. Altman. It's a sketch of his career and a biography of his life.
Wait, is that the oral biography where various people weigh in? Because that's the one I'm reading right now.
No, it's not. No, this is more of like a coffee table book.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of like pictures and large images and stuff. But I was going through it, and no, you're right. It is. It is an oral bio. I think it's that book that was expanded into a coffee table book.
I don't know what to say.
It is different accounts of people talking about their experiences working on these films and people being around them at different times. It is that book. It was just expanded into a more visual, like a big coffee table picture book. It's super cool. Altman's use of visuals and really creating his own film language in the 1970s. People are very familiar. MASH was this big success that a lot of people saw. 1970, big film, a lot of political overtones and undertones. And then he makes these really understated and overstated films that just seem to like come out of nowhere, just about a variety of subjects that tackle all sorts of means and characteristics of coming to their end. He goes through a period where he's critically reviled, and he makes a fair amount of admittedly terrible films once in a while. But
and Gabe too, I have to say that I hope you don't critically revile me, as I am going to put out the plain fact that we are closing down this show.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
so you know what, dude? What we'll do is, as they say, we will continue this conversation next week. How does that sound, my man?
Well, that sounds great. What I'm going to have some early Eastwood directed films to talk about for my man Lou in Brooklyn. I did finally get around to watching The Outlaw Josie Wales, which I somehow, despite having TBS for many, many years, I just never watched. And Honky Tonk Man is going to get finished. Breezy is going to get finished. And Firefox from '82.
Excellent. That's amazing. I wish I could go back to '82. I remember when that actually came out. I think it was at Northtown Cinema. I really do have to find the time machine, and we'll see. So, Gabe, I wish you nothing but the greatest of all nights and the best of all weeks. Absolutely, Mark. You too. Thanks to all our listeners out there. It's great to have you on board. Thanks for sending the messages, stuff like that. Any recommendations, any material, any films, any ideas, any subjects, or anything you'd like to hear on the show, send them our way. Send them a Fireside on Facebook. You can private message us and or even just post on there. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. God bless you, my man. So anyway, Gabe Van Handel, I'm the captain of the ship. I have to keep my eye on the clock. That is my duty. So yeah, what a wonderful evening it is, and what a wonderful life it is if you play your cards right. Good stuff, like I say. Just do what's best for you, man, and just really explore your self-potential. Don't let yourself down. We will be on at the same time next week on WXRWLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. To hear past episodes, visit riverwestradio.com/shows and click Cinema Fireside.